Hey everybody, what's up? Gary Simon here. So today we're going to be tackling something I never really covered before on this channel, and that's because I don't really have much experience with it, but I do have enough to at least give you a solid kind of crash course into what CSS art is. And so let me show you just an example, the example that we're going to cover. So basically, CSS art is the act of using only HTML and CSS to create characters or illustrations of some sort. And some of the examples out there that other people have created have just been mind-blowing. But this is just going to give you a real quick primer in terms of the techniques, the common CSS selectors and properties that you use to actually essentially draw with CSS. All right, so make sure to follow along. Show me in the comments if you guys have actually, did your own CSS art. I'd like to see it. And as always, make sure to subscribe and let's get started. Before we begin, this video is sponsored by Linode. Now, as a front-end developer or a designer, you know that you need a personal portfolio. And if you use a website builder like Wix or Squarespace, they lack total customization and they lock you into using their platform. But to be a pro, you need to use the tools that the pros actually use. So level up, start building your own projects and your own portfolio on an enterprise level content management system like WordPress or Drupal. Now, real web development sometimes requires knowledge of spinning up servers, managing domain names, and setting up an occasional staging environment. And there's no better or simpler way to learn the ins and outs of hosting your website than with Linode Cloud Hosting. Linode Cloud Hosting makes it as easy as possible for you to deploy a WordPress or Drupal website in seconds with the free Linode one-click app marketplace. So click on the very top link here in the YouTube description to get your free Linode account along with $20 of free hosting and all the tools that you need to build enterprise class websites. All right, so what I have here is a folder called CSS art, and inside it we have an index.html. We have just a link right here, element going to our CSS main.css file. That's in the CSS folder here. I'm using Sass for this, and if you want to compile it here live within Visual Studio Code, you can go to the extensions and you want to make sure the live Sass compiler is enabled along with live server. That's when I have this over here. This is our little preview area for a project, and I'll just give you live reload and all that stuff. So the way you get that working is you right click, open with live server. That's once you install it. And then also when you create your main.sass file, make sure you click on watch after you have that live Sass compiler installed. All right, so what we need to do first is to define some HTML elements based on our needs. So that's obviously going to be dependent upon what exactly it is you're trying to illustrate. For us, we're going to have, I want to have everything centered. So I first want to create a div class. I'm going to use M abbreviations to make this more simple in terms of writing the HTML. If you don't know what that is, just do a channel search on my YouTube channel, and I'll show you how to use it. And we're just going to say a container. I'm sorry, I have a sore throat. I've had it for like 5 days now, probably the coronavirus, not sure yet. Anyhow, so inside of our container, and we're not going to be illustrating our container element. This is just to center everything vertically and horizontally. You don't have to have this if you don't want. Inside of here, we're going to start. We're going to have like a character, and we're going to start with the head first. All right, so it's going to be div class of head. All right, so we're going to have other markup, but we're just going to start with head first in container. And so let's get our body element out of the way just to define a background color and all that stuff. So the background, I'm just going to use a particular blue color right here. That's 5CA 2C6. I don't know why I'm having a hard time reading that. Height is going to be 100% viewport height. All right. We're also going to do display grid. Place items center. So the body only has one child element, which is the div class container right here. And so that will position things vertically and horizontally within the viewport. And then also we'll just set to margin 0 as well. All right. So we don't see anything yet, but we will. Don't worry about it. Container. We're going to say display flex, justify the content is going to be center, and position will be relative. Now, we don't see anything here either, but this is just kind of giving us some setup here, which will help with our future CSS. Now let's start with the head. Here's the very first actual part where we're going to illustrate stuff. So there's two ways to go about this. Sorry, I have like an itch in my foot. All right. So there's two ways to go about this in terms of defining the height of everything and the width. You can go absolute or you can go relative units. You can use like viewport width and viewport height in terms of VW, VH. You can use percentages. I'm just going to make things super simple. We're going to use absolute, which is going to be pixels. So the head I'm going to say is 300 pixels. I might want to put the width first. And it's going to be a round head. So that means height will be 300 pixels as well. And we want it to be completely round like a circle. So we're going to say 50% for border radius. Then, so we can see it, let's give it a border of 10 pixels solid in black. And then let's also do background white. All right, there you go. Yeah, we're done. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to do position relative. And the reason we're doing this is because we're going to have a couple of elements inside of it that are going to be positioned absolutely. But we want it to be positioned absolutely in relation to its parent, which this is going to be the parent head, and that's why we put position relative here. I'll remove those just so you can see what that property does actually. But for now, we have to keep on writing. We're also going to put in justify content is going to be center. It's going to be display flex, of course, for that. And align items will be baseline. Now, again, this doesn't make sense, these three, because it didn't do anything, but I'm kind of stepping a little bit ahead because we're going to have elements inside of it. All right, so what if we wanted to do some, what if we wanted to add like a shadow here, like right on this area? So there's multiple ways to do this. We don't have to add an extra element for this, because remember, when it comes to HTML elements, they have a pseudo selector of before and after, and we can style those. So here's how you do that. All right, so what we'll do is we're going to say head before, and we're going to say content empty position absolute. So when you style these pseudo selectors, like, you're pretty much always going to have these two properties. Width is going to be 300 pixels. Height will be 300 pixels, just like the top. Border radius will be 50%, and so we're basically copying this exactly right here. And now we're going to do a box shadow, and we're going to say inset. And so if you know what a box shadow is, it just gives you a shadow around your given element. You can specify the inset property to make it go inside instead of outside like a normal shadow does. And so inset, and then we put in the following values: negative 22 pixels on the X, and then Y 5 pixels, 0, 3 pixels, RGBA, we're going to 0, 0, 0, and then 0.2. And that gives us this right here. So if you're unsure what some of this stuff does, like if we put 20 pixels here, that's going to blur it, as you can see. So that's the blur radius. There's also the spread right here. So if we save this right here at 3 and we change this to like 7, it's just going to make it thicker. All right. So we'll leave that at 3. And then RGBA is just, we're saying black, and we're going to make it at 20% opacity right here. All right. Now we can also, let's say we want a neck, right? Like a neck right here. This is the head, and this is going to be a neck. Again, you could add an element for that, like underneath, or we could use the after selector. So let's just do that. We'll say after, and we're going to put, this time for the width, we want it to be a skinny neck, so 15 pixels. Maybe that person doesn't lift, I don't know. 30 pixels for the height. And then we're also going to, we're not going to have a border radius on this. We're not going to have a box shadow. We're going to have a background. We'll say white. Can't see it, it's actually right there. And we're just going to do margin top of 300 pixels. And then also a border of 10 pixels solid black. There we go. So now we have like this little shadow on the side. We have a neck here, and we're doing pretty decent. Okay, so now let's create some two eyes. So inside of head is going to be, we'll say eye left, And also, I'm going to have another one called cutout. And we'll copy this. Now the cutout, by the way, will be something for us to add, like kind of like I guess say cheeks that are kind of cutting out the circular portion of the eye. You'll see what I mean when we get there. So eye left and eye right. So now what we're going to do, we're going to style the eyes. So we're going to take left, or we could just say eye, I suppose, but I should have done that, but I didn't. All right, so we're going to say background is black. Border radius will be 50%. Width will be 175 pixels. Height as well. All right, so we should see these two silly looking eyes. We're going to say position will be absolute. Now we turn it into a cyclops. And the reason it's centered, by the way, is because of this stuff right here. It's aligning the child elements to the center. And then we're going to do display flex here. Justify content will be center, and align items will be center. So there's, again, that's in relation to the child elements that are the cutout right here. Now we have to move each eye over, and my dog is barking down there. Margin left, we're going to say negative 180 pixels. And again, the way I arrived at these values, I was just experimenting. So a lot of times you'll be experimenting with the values just to get things aligned correctly. So margin right is going to be 180 pixels positive, or not. Margin left, I'm sorry. This stays margin left. There we go. All right, so now we have two big old alien looking eyes. And for the eyes, let's add the same sort of shadow kind of thing, except on each eye. So to do that, we're going to say left before and also right before. And we're going to say, let's copy this. We just pseudo selector, so we're just going to add those two properties. The width is going to be the same width of the eyes for the parent elements. Border radius will be 50%. And then we'll just do another box shadow inset. All right, so the inset, again, is pretty much exactly the same, except we are going to change the color. Because right now it's black, we won't be able to see that. So instead, I'm going to copy some values off screen. This is white, but it's at 16% opacity. So now we have these kind of shadow-like sort of, or highlight rather, sort of situation there for the eyes. We're also going to use right and left after selectors, and that's going to give us pupils. All right, so right after and left after. Again, same deal with these two properties. All right, we're going to do a width of 10 pixels, a height of 10 pixels, and a background of white. Now they're squares, so border radius 50%. Now just to make them a little bit more unique, I'm going to take left right here, and I'm going to override the width at 30 pixels, height 30 pixels. We'll do background transparent, and then we'll do a border of 5 pixels solid white. Not sold, but solid. Oh, not soiled. Come on, Gary. What are we doing? All right. There. Just makes it look a little bit different, right? So now the cutout. The cutout is a child element of each eye, right? So the reason I added that is because we're going to do this. I kind of want to like little cheeks that come up here, cut them out. So to do that, position absolute. We're going to do a width of 100 pixels, height of 100 pixels. Background will be white. Let's save this just so we can see what it's doing so far. Border radius, 50%. And then we're going to do align self, flex end. And then we will margin bottom, negative 50 pixels. Now that looks a little strange, but you'll see once we add the mouth, it will start to make sense. All right, so let's do the mouth now. So the mouth is just going to be a single class. and it's going to be right inside of head. All right, so it's going to be after the two eyes. Not head, mouth. I'm sorry. There we go. There we go. Okay, so now for the mouth, we're going to say width is going to be 180 pixels. Oh my God, what am I doing? There we go. Might need that. All right, so width is going to be 180 pixels. Height, 180 pixels. We're going to do this by creating a circle. Position absolute, of course. Border is going to be 10 pixels solid black, just so we can see what's happening. Border radius is going to be 50%. All right, and align self is going to be center. And so now our goal is to hide everything up here at the top half. So to do that, we're going to use clip path. Now let me show you a cool tool. I've shown it loads of other times right here. So this is called Clippy. Go to Google and type CSS Clippy, you'll find it. But this basically allows you to choose one of these predefined clip path sort of elements here, and you can position them in different areas in terms of what you want to be cut off. So we kind of want this one to be cut off right around there. And the actual property that I used is 60% at 49%, and I'll probably just use 50, but same thing right there. So look at that. Isn't that cool? So it just basically hides everything. So it acts like a mask. All right. So now for the mouth, well, let's say we wanted to add like little, cheek little semicircles at the end. All right, so remember, it's an element, so it has a before and after selector, and that's all we need, one here and then one there. So inside of here, let's just go ahead and say and after. All right, what we're going to say is position absolute once again, content empty. Width is going to be 30 pixels, height will be 30 pixels, and border radius will be 50%, and border will be 10 pixels, not one, solid and black. See what that looks like so far. Can't see it yet. We're going to do top 102 pixels. Left is going to be -9 pixels. There it is. And we're going to do a clip path, and this time again it's going to be a circle. All right, so I'm not certain if I really like the position of that too much. Probably push it down a little bit more and to the left, but it's fine right there. I think that'll work. So then what we want to do is simply take after, because there's two of them overlapped on top of each other because we have before and after selected. So now what we can do is just say left is going to be 140 pixels. Top will be 107 pixels, and then we'll say clip path circle 50% at 100% 0 this time. That pushes it over, or flips it over there to the right. Okay, it's a little bit off, but again, you guys can play with that. I'm satisfied just for the purposes, of the tutorial. So now let's get a body going on here. So we'll take where are we going to put the body? Yeah, it's going to be outside of head. So body. And for the body, we'll go ahead and choose. We're just about almost done. We're going to say position will be absolute. Height is going to be 50 pixels, and the width will be 100 pixels. Let's give it a background. It's going to be kind of just like a blue. So for RGB, oops, let me fix that. Let me just say white and then get this out. There we go. So we can see it's at the top. Now we're going to say top is going to be 350 pixels right there. And then we also want the border to be 10 pixels solid black. All right, and then also border radius. We want a unique border radius. We only want the shoulders to be rounded. All right, so here's another tool called Fancy Border Radius Generator. And so you could do something like, it's remembering my last selection. So you can just start adjusting these. This is the border radius right here that we're going to use because it's set up like this. We can further adjust these values here. What I ultimately ended up using was 100% values. So let me just paste that and look over here. Very cool. Now if we want two arms, now again, remember we have a pseudo selector for before and after, right? So we'll say and before and after. Again, we do this whole bit right here. And then we do a width, we'll say 15 pixels. Height will be 20 pixels. And top will be 30 pixels. Now again, we can't see this yet. But what we want to do now is for the left arm, we'll say, let's see here, and before, border right will be 10 pixels solid black. This should give us the left arm. And then for the right arm, we're going to say border left, 10 pixels solid black. And what am I doing? Why is this not working? Oh, why am I saying right is supposed to be after? I'm thinking let the right arm. All right, so border, yeah, left, and then we're going to put right 0. There. All right, so that's our character. Very simple. I want to add like a background, interesting background, just to show you another thing that you could that a lot of the CSS artist people really use a lot. And we're going to add a class of BG just for background, and we're adding it up there at top. And let's say, for instance, we want to, I don't know, some sort of just like, they're not good looking clouds, but I'm going to show you anyhow. We're going to use this simple example here. So we'll say BG, width will be 100 pixels, height will be 50 pixels, position will be absolute. Left, let's see, left will be negative, we're going to start at negative 100 pixels. We're going to do border radius of 30%. All right, and then we're going to, let me just give you temporarily a background color. That's what it looks like right now. We're going to get rid of that, but you'll see why in a second. We'll do top 20 pixels. All right, and we're going to do box shadow. So box shadow is a great way that you can add multiple copies of whatever your original element is that you're applying it to. So we can create multiple elements of these, any number of them. So here's how that works. What we're going to do is on the X, it's going to be 400 pixels. On the Y, it'll be 100 pixels down. And then for the blur and spread, we'll put 0. RGBA, 0, 0, 0 for black, and then 0.15 or so. And so we'll see a copy way pushed over there. And we can keep on doing this just by putting commas here. So take this. We'll just make like 3 of them. And so for this one, we'll push the next one maybe just to 50 pixels. So it'll be X is going to be 50, and then the other one we'll put 150 pixels down. And then the final one we'll do 400 again and 250. There we go. So now we can get rid of the background up here, which gets rid of this one. And now we have these. And then if you wanted to, just for the fun, you can animate all this stuff. So we can do BG anim, we'll call it 3 seconds, infinite, and alternate. So we'll create at keyframes, BG anim, from, and then we can animate the box shadow itself. So we'll say from here to, and then I'm just going to slightly, I'm just going to copy the values I had from the reference project. And so all I'm doing is like moving the values right here from 400 to 450, from 50 to 0, and then 400 to 350. So we're just moving them slightly. And it just gives it a little bit of, I don't know, texture, if you will. All right, and so that is it. Obviously a very simple, strange looking character, but for a beginning level sort of tutorial for helping you kind of get to grasp of how you use CSS to piece together a character, I think is pretty solid. Of course, things can get a lot more complex, and I plan to, once I get better myself, I plan to cover more of like a complex, or at least intermediate to complex tutorial in the future. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. If you did, as always, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys real soon. Goodbye.